Good evening, everybody. I hope that you are doing great today. Hope that you had a wonderful day. We had chicken spaghetti for supper, so I have no complaints. And what I wanted to do is just real quickly give you a devotional thought for the day. And what was weird this morning is I was reading in my Bible reading plan. I'm reading Acts 18 and 19 this morning, and kind of highlighted and looked at the story of this guy named Demetrius. So when Paul is going on his missionary journeys, he's preaching, and I actually have my Bible right here. Let me see. So Paul is on his missionary journeys, going around preaching. Demetrius is an artisan in one of these towns, and he makes the false gods that people worship. So everybody's listening to Paul's preaching. They're accepting the gospel, and Demetrius gets worried and upset and kind of causes this uproar in town because they're taking away his business. So he begins to be worried about that. And I was trying to find the exact verse. My journal is gone. I have it in my journal. But anyway, Demetrius causes this uproar in town, and he gets these other artisans together and says, look, people are getting saved. They're not going to worship idols anymore. This is hurting our business. We got to run Paul out of town. So in my journal this morning, I kind of made some notes and thoughts about finances and things like that. Finances don't secure our future, and that's what Demetrius is after. He feels like he's got to have the money to be safe and secure, and I made some notes about that. And then Allison came upstairs and was talking about her quiet time this morning, and her small group is actually reading The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend this book to you. If you'll comment below while I'm talking and say, hey, I really want it, I promise I'll read it. The first person that comments that, I will have one in the church office with your name on it. As a matter of fact, you can have this one right here. So the first person that comments, I promise I will read the book in its entirety. I'll get you one. Okay. So anyway, she comes up and she's talking about what they are reading in their small group. And I just, it was interesting to me that the two things went together, because she comes up and she starts talking about the same thing. So what I wanted to do for the devotional thought today is read you a section of A.W. Tozer's book. But before I do that, hey, what's up?
Why don't you just start working on some Toby?
Blakely's doing her shakes. I'm on Facebook Live. Sorry, we're doing Blakely's breathing treatment, and we're in the middle of that. So anyway, let me remind you of some things that are coming up, and then I want to share this devotional thought with you. Here's the book right here. It's this one looks like this. It's kind of an updated version. The Pursuit of God, A.W. Tozer, great book. Okay, so a couple of things coming up. All right, family worship tomorrow. All right, 7 o'clock. Okay, the Graham family is going to be leading us in our family worship, and I'm excited about that. If you don't know Lincoln and Jessica, you are missing a blessing. And they've got a bunch of little rugrats, and they love the Lord, and we'll have a good time with them. So that'll be tomorrow, 7 o'clock. So you need to keep that on your calendar. Also, don't forget our senior adults. If you will, children, if you will videotape your parents or seniors who are Mount Gilead members, you can videotape them. You can text the video to me directly if you want to do that, or you can just put it on your Facebook page and tag me, Nolan, Bradley, something that'll get our attention. That would be great. So we've got that coming up. Don't forget these 3 questions. That's our interview questions. So I will pause for 2 seconds if you want to screenshot this, and then you'll have your questions. You can also find these questions on the Mount Gilead Facebook page as well. So those are our interview questions. And then we've got a little more details on our Mother's Day service coming up. Mother's Day drive-in service They did not change any of the rules for churches meeting together, so it will look exactly like we did for Easter, okay, with our sunrise service there, except the time's going to be different, okay? The time will be 9 o'clock in the morning, okay? So drive-in service at the church, 9 a.m. So those are the big things we have coming up right now. So let me read this section to you that deals with things, okay? So Abraham was old when Isaac was born, old enough indeed to have been his grandfather, and the child became at once the delight and idol of his heart. From that moment when he first stooped to take the tiny form awkwardly in his arms, he was an eager love slave of his son. God went out of his way to comment on the strength of his affection. And it's not hard to understand. The baby represented everything sacred to his father's heart, the promises of God, the covenants, the hopes of the years, and the long messianic dream. As he watched him grow from babyhood to young manhood, the heart of the old man was knit closer and closer with the life of his son, until at last the relationship bordered upon the perilous. It was then that God stepped in to save both father and son from the consequences of an uncleansed love. Take your son, your only son, said God to Abraham, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. The sacred writer spares us a close-up of the agony that night on the slopes near Beersheba when the aged man had it out with his God. But respectful imagination may view in awe the bent form and convulsive wrestling alone under the stars. Possibly not again until a greater than Abraham wrestled in the Garden of Gethsemane did such mortal pain visit a human soul. If only the man himself might have been allowed to die, that would have been easier 1,000 times, for he was old now, and to die would have been no ordeal for one who had walked so long with God. Besides, it would have been at last a sweet pleasure to let his dimming vision rest upon the figure of his stalwart son, who would live to carry on the Abrahamic line and fulfill in himself the promises of God made long before in Ur of the Chaldees. How should he kill the boy? Even if he could get the consent of his wounded and protesting heart, how could he reconcile the act with the promise? It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. This was Abraham's trial by fire, and he did not fail in the crucible. While the stars still shone like sharp white points above the tent where the sleeping Isaac lay, and long before the gray dawn had begun to lighten the east, the old saint had made up his mind. He would offer his son as God had directed him to do, and then trust God to raise him from the dead. This, says the writer to the Hebrews, was the solution his aching heart found sometime in the dark night, and he rose early in the morning to carry out the plan. It is beautiful to see that, while he might have questioned God's method, he correctly sensed the secret of his great heart, and the solution accords well with the New Testament scripture, whoever loses their life for me will find it. God let the suffering old man go through with it up to the point where he knew there would be no retreat, and then forbade him to lay a hand upon the boy. To the wondering patriarch, he now says, in effect, "It's all right, Abraham. I never intended that you should actually kill the boy. I only wanted to remove him from the temple of your heart that I might reign unchallenged there. I want to correct the perversion that existed in your love. Now you may have the boy sound and well. Take him and go back to your tent. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Then heaven opened, and a voice was heard saying to him, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." The old man of God lifted his head to respond to the voice and stood there on the mount, strong and pure and grand, a man marked out by the Lord for special treatment, a friend and favorite of the Most High. Now he was a man wholly surrendered, a man utterly obedient, a man who possessed nothing. He had concentrated his all in the person of his dear son, and God had taken it from him. God could have begun out of the margin of Abraham's life and worked inward to the center. Instead, he chose to cut quickly to the heart and have it over in one sharp act of separation. In dealing thus, he practiced an economy of means and time. It hurt cruelly, but it was effective. I have said Abraham possessed nothing, yet was not this poor man rich? Everything he owned before was still his to enjoy: sheep, camels, herds, and goods of every sort. He also had his wife and his friends, and best of all, he had his son Isaac safe by his side. He had everything, but he possessed nothing. There's the spiritual secret. There's the sweet theology of the heart, which can be learned only in the school of renunciation. The books on systematic theology overlook this, but the wise will understand it. And listen to this. After that bitter and blessed experience, I think the words my and mine never had again the same meaning for Abraham. The sense of possession which they connote was gone from his heart. Things had been cast out forever. They had now become external to the man. His inner heart was free from them. The world said, Abraham is rich, but the aged patriarch only smiled. He could not explain it to them, but he knew that he owned nothing and that his real treasures were inward and eternal. So I pray that that was a blessing to you. Spoke to my heart today. Thank you guys for watching. And like I said, the first one that comments, this one's yours. Okay, so y'all can bicker. You can thumb wrestle over it. Okay, or you can read it and pass it along. So don't forget our updates. We talked about those. I pray God blesses you. Y'all have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.